morning. After what you just heard, I think perhaps you might be relieved about what I'm about to say next. The question in this trial won't be if you find Mr. Scanlon guilty. It will be what you find him guilty of. We start there. You heard a lot from the judge already about the presumption of innocence and how the Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So you might be asking yourself, how do I square what I just said to you with that? And this is what I mean when I say the question here isn't if, but of what. I mean this: the indictment alleges murder, but you will learn that this trial, and when we put folks on trial for a crime like this, that it's not just as simple as innocent or guilty, convict or acquit. You'll be told what the law is in this Commonwealth and what it means when we talk about first-degree murder and second-degree murder and other forms of homicide. And so, if you experienced any relief at all when I did suggest to you how I expect this case to end, I would also say that in some ways what you're being asked to do is among the hardest things we ever ask a jury to do, which is to think very carefully and listen very carefully to all of the evidence and not just focus on the outcome, but all of the circumstances surrounding that. So ADA Green has suggested here that this is all very straightforward. But I would suggest, and I will tell you that I expect that the evidence is not going to show you that was simply that it was over. The evidence is going to show that Miss Avery and Mr. Scanlon, in fact, had a lengthy on-again, off-again relationship. And that at the time that this happened, they had been on again for quite a long time, since their daughter was born in August and since before that, through her pregnancy. And that on January 11th, yes, you are going to hear evidence that they were contemplating the end of the relationship, but they still had a home together. They still lived together. They were still parenting together. I'm looking at a group of folks who surely with their life experience can appreciate that the evidence is going to show that as young people who had been together a long time and as brand new parents, who the evidence is going to show had both hoped and had every expectation of parenting that child together, that even if they weren't together, that as long as they were still living in the same home and until they were not, that they were still operating with this certain kind of relationship. Now here's what's not in dispute. Ms. Avery hooked up that night with a coworker, a man that she had not been out with previously. She wasn't carrying on a long-term affair with this young man. That was the first night that they had been together. And it's not in dispute that when Mr. Scanlon came to the whip, they weren't just flirting, but that she was making out. Miss Avery was making out with Mr. Burns. And then, knowing full well that he was at the bar, went directly outside and had sex with Mr. Burns in his truck. Now, you're also going to be asked to think about the evidence about what happened after Mr. Scanlon discovered them in the truck. There are going to be questions that I'm asking you to pay attention to. How long did it take for them to get home? The evidence is going to show you that from the time Mr. Scanlon found Miss Avery and Mr. Burns together in the truck to the time they got home was an incredibly short period of time, minutes. And you're also going to be asked to consider how that discussion continued after they were in the truck, after they were on the ride home, and what happened in the moments after they got home. And that's all very important because, as I said before, it's not the case that we can just look at the terrible outcome here and decide that's it. It's all very straightforward. I don't have to think about this anymore. In fact, you're going to have to think about very hard questions indeed about what all of the circumstances mean. Now, I also want to make it clear that when I say that the law asks this of you, I am not suggesting that the law says that what happened here was okay and not worthy of punishment. It's that the law says that you must presume Mr. Scanlon innocent, and the Commonwealth must prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt before you convict him of any crime. So that brings us back to where I started, which is to say, to put what I said at the beginning of my remarks another way, and because the law says, and you must presume Blake Scanlon innocent, I will be asking you to find that the Commonwealth has not proven beyond a reasonable doubt Blake Scanlon guilty of some of these charges. And I will be asking you to find him not guilty of first-degree murder. I ask you to listen carefully. I ask you to keep your mind open to all the questions and to be prepared to do and apply the law at the end of this case the judge tells you must be applied. It's not easy, but after speaking with all of you to select this jury, I'm very confident that you can, and I trust you with this job.
Thank you very much, Attorney Elkins. I'm going to have her take our morning break now because there's a few matters I need to talk about. So remember I said when we picked, we'll take our morning break at kind of usually 11 o'clock, but at a point in time that might be logical. It's a logical time for us here before we start the witnesses in the case. So the morning break is now. We'll see you back here in about 10 or 15 minutes. We'll go from that point until 1 o'clock. All right?